So in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make a hand-built cup from a slab. We want to make sure that we use a thin slab. I have a few examples of what a thin slab is here. So this slab is about, I would say the thickness is about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4. We make our slabs thin so that the cup won't be too heavy. Okay. One of the tools you can use is one of these cardboard tubes that is wrapped in paper. A cardboard tube wrapped in paper is a good tool to use. A scratching tool. You're going to need a pony roller and your pen tool. Okay, and you're also probably going to need a ruler. All right. So the first thing I did was I took a slab and I rolled it thin, and I cut out a shape. The height didn't matter as much. I wanted to cut it out 11.5 inches long. Okay, so I have an 11.5 inch slab. It can be any height that I want it to be. 11.5 inches is the size roughly that this is going to be, needs to be. On the edge that I'm going to be drinking out of, I need to bevel that edge. So I'm going to take my roller, I'm going to use this rounded part of the roller, and I'm going to have it at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to lightly roll it over the top. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And then I also need to bevel the edges. So I'm going to bevel the sides as well. I'm going to bevel one side, flip my slab back over, and bevel the other side. Okay, so I've got one side beveled, and then the top is beveled on both sides. Okay, next I'm going to scratch my edges that are going to attach. When I do that, first I'm going to make sure that my slab is the right length. So I'm going to very gently just roll the clay over the tube, and I want to see where it lines up. And it looks like it lines up just right. You can see it lines up with about 1/4 inch of a seam, which is perfect. So that's an 11.5 inch slab. I'm going to scratch this bevel. And then I'm going to brush a little bit of water on it. And then I'm going to flip my slab over. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Scratch this side. And apply a little bit of water as well. Then I'm going to take my slab and roll it right over this way, all the way down, just so that my seam lines up. I don't need a very long seam. You don't want the seam to be any longer than 1/4 of an inch. This is usually a little longer than I want it to be. What I can do then is I can take and I can cut off a little bit of this excess, because I don't need the seam to be so long. It'll make it thicker in that one spot. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very lightly roll my seam. You can try to hide the seam by blending it if you want, or you can leave it there and just have the seam be there. That's okay. Okay, now that I've rolled my slab, now I need to take out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unwrap the paper tube with the paper. Make sure you throw this paper away. I want to get until I can grab the actual tube itself. There's a little cardboard tube in here, and I want to pull the cardboard tube out. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel the paper away. When I peel the paper away, I don't want to warp the cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly just twist and pull this out. Now I have my paper out. That's going to leave me with a really nice hollow tube that is nice and round. Okay. Now I have some areas that I need to clean up a little bit. I can use my brush to clean those things up. So if I've got my seam here, I can use my brush and I can kind of brush the seam to make it a little smoother. If I want this to not have such an angle on the seam, I can carefully with my pen tool go around and just cut a little bit of clay off. and then pinch it with my fingers to make sure it's nice and beveled and smooth, just to even out that back edge. Then what I need to do is I need to get a base. Now, one way to make the base of your cup is to take a little piece of a slab. I have a little piece of a slab here. And then what I need to do is I need to measure it out. So I've got my cup. I'm going to put my cup right over the top. Then I'm going to cut out the outline. Now when I cut this outline out, I'm going to cut it just a little bit wider than my cup. I can always clean this up a little bit. It doesn't need to be a perfect cut. You could put this on a banding wheel if you want, to cut it with a banding wheel. But I'm just going to cut it freehand. And then there's a little bit of excess, more on this side than I need. I'm going to cut that off, a little bit more on this side, a little bit more over here. Okay, now I'm going to lift my cup up, then I'm going to scratch around this outside edge. Then I'm going to take it and kind of push down a little bit and wiggle it with those two scratched areas that are both wet. Now when I pick it up, the bottom will stick. Now that my bottom is stuck, I just want to make sure that the bottom is well attached. I can take my roller and very lightly just roll on that edge. That'll help compress the clay pieces together so it doesn't crack. Okay. So now you can see I have a little bit of excess around the edges. If I want to, I can fold that clay over, but it'll look better if I cut off some of that excess. And now I can get a little closer as I cut it off. Okay. Then I can take my roller and roll it one more time. I can roll the sides so it's nice and rounded. You'll notice my hands are very dry. I'm not using water with my hands. I don't need the water to smooth anything out. Okay, and that's a very simple cylinder that will make a coffee cup. The next thing I would need to do, if I was making a very plain cup, is I would take a slab and I can cut a handle from my slab. When you're making a handle from your slab, you usually want the place where the handle connects to be wider. So I'm going to cut out a handle, but I've cut an angle on this side, and then I'm cutting an angle on this side. Okay. So now I've got this kind of letter I. All right, so now I've got a handle. I'm going to take a little bit of water and just kind of pull on that handle a little bit, just kind of round out the final edges a little bit. Then I need to attach my handle. I'm going to attach my handle right on my seam. When I attach my handle, it's important, there's two ways I can attach it. I can try to attach it straight on. This isn't very thick. If I was going to attach it straight on, I would kind of fold this clay in a little bit and then push down and try to make this a little thicker, okay? Because I want it to be thicker. If I'm going to push straight on, it gives it a stronger connection. Okay, so you can see I made that thicker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it a little bit in water, place it on my cup. That'll give me a little watermark so I know where to scratch it. I want to scratch the handle. It's important that your handle is thickest where it connects. I have one hand on the inside, one on the out, and I'm just kind of wiggling it together, pushing my handle down. Okay. So there's the top of my handle. Now I'm going to choose where the bottom of my handle goes. And for this cup, I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to scratch it with my scratching tool. It's most important that you really attach the top part well. The bottom part of the handle is less likely to crack than the top is, because gravity is pulling on the top one and it's pushing the bottom one in. I'm not going to attach this one straight on. I'm going to attach it kind of at an angle a little bit. Okay. I'm going to put my hand on the inside so I can support it from the inside. I'm going to push down with my pin tool. You don't have to put these two little dots there. I'm just doing it because it pushes it down and adds a little bit of decoration. Now I take my brush while it's still wet and I clean up the edges and where the extra scratch marks were so you can't see those. Then I come up to the top of my handle. I want to make sure it's really well attached. I want to make sure that everything's nice and smooth, so I'm just kind of brushing it with a little bit of water. Now I look at my handle shape and I want to take my finger and get the shape right by using a wet finger on the inside and cleaning up the bottom. Okay, so now I've got a handle on this cup. This is a very plain cup. We're going to come back to this cup in a second. Right here I have another cup. You can see that I made the cup the same way and I have a bottom on it like this, right? But instead of putting this bottom on right now, I'm going to show you something called darting. Darting is when I take a section of clay out and attach it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a section of clay out and cut that piece out. I'm going to dart this one right here. This is where my handle's going to go. So I'm actually going to cut out this little leaf shape. Okay. Then I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to first scratch it on the inside a little bit because these parts are going to attach. Okay. A little bit of water in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this clay together and attach that seam. Now instead of having a straight-sided cup, I have a cup that has a little spot out for the handle where I can put a little handle right there. Okay, I just need to clean up this seam. First thing I'm going to do is blend it together really well. It's very important on the inside that I blend it well. When you're doing a dart in the middle of a cup, it's always a good idea to put a little coil along that edge and blend a coil in there. So if you see in here, I've got a little coil. I'm putting it right along the edge that I darted and pressing it down. And then I'll use my paintbrush and some water to blend that coil in. First I'll use my fingers. You'll notice I'm doing this before putting the bottom on so that I can grab it from both sides and make sure it's really well attached. Then I'm going to take my paintbrush and some water and brush that coil in so you can't see that it's a coil. But I could take a handle and attach it there and there, and now I've got a cup that the handle kind of fits inside the cup. Okay, and that's darting. I can also dart the top or the bottom of a cup, so we're back to this cup. If I want to dart the top or bottom, I cut out a triangle. And if I want to dart it, I can dart it more than once. Usually you'll want to do it at least 2 times. If I dart the top of a cup, or the bottom, so now this cup tilts in a little bit as it goes in. It has a little bit of a tilt in. It'll keep the liquid warmer. The last thing I'm going to show you with a cup is that you do not have to, so I'll use this one. You do not have to use the mold. You can just roll it by hand. So I'm going to Show you a different technique for the bottom of your cup. So now that I have this round, you can also pinch the bottom into a shape to make a footed bottom. So I'm going to make a bottom with 3 feet. So I have one corner there, which is on my seam. Then I have 2 other corners on the side. So now I have a triangle. I want to scratch along the edges, the inside edge, when I do this. Then I'm going to slowly, a little bit of water, bring these together, pinch the corners together. And I'm going to push in and down as I pinch. And I won't be able to close it all the way. I'm going to have to put a little triangle of clay into the bottom. I think these feet look best if they're sculpted a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of push down on this foot like this. So I'm not leaving it like a straight triangle. I'm trying to push in a little bit so that it has 3 little tall feet. So you can see that I'm making the feet distinct from the piece. Now I flip it over. On the inside, I do need to make a little triangle for the inside, but I also need to take 3 little balls of clay and throw them into each of those corners. This little ball is going to fill that corner and make sure it doesn't open up when it cracks, so I make a little ball. Doesn't need to be big, and I throw it in the corner. Same thing here. Okay. Once I put the ball in all 3 corners, I can use the back side of my pin tool, a little bit of water on it, and just kind of push it down into the corner. Do the same thing with all 3. And then I'll brush it smooth. This just fills that corner so it won't crack. Now I need to make a small triangle. I have a triangle here. I'm going to take this and dip it in some water, and then I'm going to set it on the inside here. Takes a little bit of maneuvering. I'm going to, it was upside down, so I've got to flip it over. I'm moving it around with my pin tool into position. I'm just trying to get it right in the middle. There we go. So now I've got it in place. Now I'm just going to kind of push it down on the edges with my pin tool, make sure it sticks. And then to get all this nice and smooth, I'm going to use my brush, and I'm just going to brush some water in there. I'm going to brush the whole area until it looks nice and smooth. It's not going to be a totally flat bottom, but I can brush away any of the lines. Okay. On the bottom side here, you'll notice I still have that little triangle there. I'm just going to push in on that triangle a little bit, make sure it's nice and sealed. And then I'm going to brush away any scratch marks or any little boogers that are in there. And then I can put a little drop of glaze in there and make that maybe a different color and kind of have like a little surprise in the bottom with color. Okay, this can get a handle the same way as the other ones did, but also there's one more technique you can do with these cups, and that's stretching. I can, from the inside, right now the cup has straight walls. I'm going to make it have a little bit more of a round wall. I can use my fingers for that by dipping my finger maybe in a little bit of water and then stretching with my finger. And all I'm going to do is stretch the clay out with my finger, and that's going to widen the cup and give it a little bit of a belly. So you can see now that the cup flares out on this side. I can do all the sides equally. You can use your paddle if you want to flare it out. This will just kind of generically flare it out. I'm using this curve right here, and I'm pushing the inside. I'm flaring it out. Okay. Then I can attach my handle at the bottom. now I have a little handle on this cup. Okay, so these are really, really quick demonstrations. You have 3 weeks to do this. You'll need to make at least 2 cups if you're making just coffee cups. Go online and search Slab Cups and you'll find some more information on how to make them, or you'll see other ways of making a slab cup, or you can make your cup on the pottery wheel. For the holiday project, it's a free project. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to make cups. That's it.